How you guys doing? Good. How you guys doing? Yeah. Okay, let's collectively say, how you guys doing? Yeah. Praise God, there's somebody alive in here. No, we're going to have the adventure of talking about the Shroud of Turin tonight. How many of y'all know anything about the Shroud of Turin? All right, perfect. We're gonna talk about what it is or what it is not. What it is supposedly is the supposed burial cloth that Jesus was put in when he was taken down off the borrowed tomb. We know Joseph of Arimathea asked if he could have the body, and when he took the body off the cross, they took him, put him into a borrowed tomb, and he was never properly buried according to Jewish customs, and that's why the Mary, and Mary were all headed to the tomb on Sunday morning. And Mary was a very popular name, and so was John. Anyway, and so was Jesus, just for technical purposes. But they were all headed to the tomb Sunday morning so they could do a proper, what is that? Why can't I say proper? Oh, I have ADD, just keep up. We'll all be fine. Proper Jewish burial on Sunday morning. That's where they were headed to go do that. Of course, they found the stone rolled back, and the rest is history. Literally, here we are still talking about it. So, we're going to talk about that. Before we get into that, I have to say this, though. My faith in the resurrection, does not rest on this. Let me repeat that. This thing can go away, and I still believe the resurrection based on the historical evidence for it. I have an entire talk, it's kind of a two-part talk, on the resurrection, the historical Jesus and the resurrection. There's enough evidence on the resurrection for Jesus Christ that is plenty to be convicting it in a court of law that the incident happened. It's the best explanation that he came up out of the grave and was seen by a multitude of people. So I'm part of Reasons for Hope, and we put together these videos called Debunked. If you've never seen debunked videos, what's wrong with you? First off. Second off, come out of your rock that you're living under. And third off, I'm going to play one of them for you, and it's one that's called There's No Evidence for the Resurrection, Debunked. That's the whole concept of debunked. And it's going to kind of touch on just a little bit of the history. This is meant for the next generation coming up. So it's fast-paced. We've got 29 of them up on our app. I'll show you how to download that here in just a minute. It's a free app. Guess how much it costs? $0 $0 That's right. So we're going to play that.
Now, lots of people say that there's no evidence for the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So all I'm going to do here is provide one line of evidence. It's unfortunate that I just don't have the time to mention something like the half-dozen facts developed by resurrection expert Gary Habermas, for instance. Minimal facts that even skeptics, atheists, and liberal scholars agree on. These facts are as follows. 1, that Jesus died by crucifixion. 2, that very soon afterwards, his followers had real experiences that they thought were actual appearances of the risen Jesus. 3, that their lives were transformed as a result, even to the point of being willing to die specifically for their faith in the resurrection message. 4, that these things were taught very early, soon after the crucifixion. 5, that James, Jesus' unbelieving brother, became a Christian due to his own experience that he thought was the resurrected Christ. And 6, that the Christian persecutor Paul, formerly Saul of Tarsus, also became a believer after a similar experience. Man, I wish I had the time to mention those, but I just don't. No time, good sir. No time at all. I just don't have time to bring up what former atheist and law-trained journalist Lee Strobel said when he said, I figured it would be easy to disprove the resurrection. Give me a weekend and I can shred Christianity's central claim. Well, it wasn't that easy. After investigating the historical evidence, Mr. Strobel believed in the resurrection of Jesus. Watch the movie, read the books. Bummer I couldn't mention that to you. Ain't got time for this quote either. My job is to infer what is most reasonable from the list of evidences, said cold case detective J. Warner Wallace. After digging into the evidence, I was convinced that what the Bible claims about the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus is the best explanation. The only weakness in the case, and there are always weaknesses, was my own bias against resurrections. Now, since I don't have time to mention such things, let me just get right to my point, okay? My one and only line of evidence has to do with the appearances of Jesus after his death. This is recorded in an early creed cited by the aforementioned Paul the Apostle, which we find in his letter to the Corinthian church. For I delivered to you as of first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the Scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day in accordance with the Scriptures, and that he appeared to Cephas, then to the 12. Then he appeared to more than 500 brothers at one time. Then he appeared to James. Then to all the apostles. And last of all, he appeared also to me. Okay, there's a lot of people who saw Jesus after he was crucified and buried. And this is exactly why Paul is so confident to stand in front of Festus and King Agrippa and tell them the truth. It's in Acts 25 and 26. Here's a snippet. Paul says, I stand here testifying, saying nothing but what the prophets and Moses said would come to pass, that the Christ must suffer, and that that by being the first to rise from the dead, he would proclaim light both to our people and to the Gentiles. Now Festus said with a loud voice, Paul, your great learning is driving you out of your mind. Not sure if that was his actual accent, but Paul said, I am not out of my mind, most excellent Festus. I am speaking true and rational words, for the king knows about these things. None of these things has escaped his notice, for this has not been done in a corner. In other words, all this was falsifiable. Everyone around town was talking about Jesus' resurrection. People had seen him. The tomb was empty. The stone was rolled away. The guards were perplexed. The religious leaders were mystified, trying to create a lie about what happened to the body. Paul, who was persecuting Christians earlier, was now one of them, preaching the resurrection of Christ. None of this was hidden. It was all out in the open. So, my eclectic, evidence-eager evangelist, each ecstatically expecting an extraordinary ending, I leave thee with this, from Clive Staples Lewis. This is the story. What are we to make of Christ? There is no question of what we can make of him. It is entirely a question of what he intends to make of us. You must accept or reject the story. But what you can't do is glibly claim or irresponsibly assert that there is no evidence for the resurrection of Jesus, because that, my friends, has been debunked. Adios.
So that's just a snippet of why I believe the resurrection to be true, because historically we can know that. If you have your phones, get your phones out. This is going to be the time to get your phones out. Nobody's going to yell at you. Get your phones out, go to your app store, whether it's Google Play if you're a loser, or your app store on iPhones. And this is a free app. I'm not selling you anything. I'm giving you something. I'm giving you a free gift. Just go to your app store, type in RFORH, and you're going to see a black background with a blue asterisk. Download that app, and there's 29 of those debunked videos on there. But then there's also 60-second apologetics. There's 3-minute apologetics. There's 60-minute apologetics. There's 45-minute apologetics. There's 32 minutes, 28 minutes, 14 minutes, and 17 minutes. There's a minute for every attention span that you have. We've got stuff up there. My entire TV show that I host, season 1 is up there. You can go to podcasts and shows, and there's Debunked Files, which is a newer style podcast that we do. There's a ton of resources. If you're interested in learning, you cannot say that you're not going to get it, because we have got you covered. More than covered. It'll take, by the time you get through with content, my daughter-in-law runs the app. She'll have twice the amount of content back up there again, so it's always up there. So, moving on to the rest of the Shrouded Turin. So we're going to talk about the Shrouded Turin. What exactly is it? Again, it's the proposed burial cloth of Jesus. It's about 14 feet long. It's about 4 feet wide. And then it's been through a fire that I want to show you first. I always got to put in there, and then I want to show you a video about the fire. You can see I call it the Jesus burrito theory. Thank you, Martin. I appreciate that very much. I think most people are like, can I laugh at that? I had one lady last night go, that's not funny. I was like, wow. Okay, Karen. Now, if you're named Karen in here, I love you. You're a special person. Anyway, so we put the body in the shroud, and the shroud was folded back on top. It was a one-piece shroud, right? Are you Karen? I was like, oh no, did I really do that? Usually things stay in my head until they don't. When I was a pastor, the sound booth had a 24 by 24 air filter. And I would be up there, I thought I was doing good, and all of a sudden the sound booth was holding up a filter. You get it? Hello, filter yourself. Anyways. So in 1532 was in a fire, so we're going to explain. So that's how he was in there. Let's look at this.
1532, Chambéry Cathedral, France. For its safekeeping, the Savoy family puts the shroud in a casket and hides it in a crypt behind a grille with 4 locks, each with a separate key. But on December 15th, a fire blazes through the cathedral. Clergymen frantically search for the 4 keys, but to no avail. Finally, a blacksmith is summoned and manages to free the shroud, but not before the metal casket has started to melt and drip on the folded cloth inside, scarring it forever with burn holes and scorch lines down both sides of the image.
So the reason why I have to play that and show you how important it is because when you look at the shroud, you look at it, it's like one of those what do you see? Little mental challenges, And it's like that because there's these patches that are sewn on there. All of these patches are where when the box dripped in the fire, started to melt, it melted down through. And I'll show you how the shroud was folded in just a minute, but it melted down through the shroud. And have you ever done a paper angel before? This is a first century herringbone weave pattern, but all these things are like the concept of a paper angel. Like whenever you cut a paper angel, you fold the paper up, you make one cut, and when you unfold it, it has symmetrical patterns that forms in the end, or you can do snowflakes or anything like that. This is like that, where these two match these two, which kind of match the ones down there, which match here, but these here match there just as much as those match, and you kind of get this symmetry because of the way that it was burned. So it's got patchwork that the nuns cut out the worst part of the burn. That, like when I was a kid, if I got a hole in my knee, my mom would patch a big old like plaid patch on my knee to keep the hole from growing, you know. And I'd be like, Mom, she's like, don't tear your pants, you know. And so that was a don't tear your pants, use that ugly patch. That's the same thing on here. They cut out the worst part, they sewed it back in to protect the shroud from getting teared up anymore. So then you've got burn marks here. You've got these two scorch lines that run all the way down here. Then you've got watermarks. You've got watermarks here, here, here. There's a big watermark right there, right? And then you've got blood on the cloth. You've got pollens. You've got limestone. But what a lot of people don't recognize when they first look at the cloth, you all right? That was like from your toes all the way up. I love it. And we're post-COVID now. You can cough all you want. Back in the airports, God bless, during COVID, like, if you coughed, you were like, you know, priests start walking out with holy water and stuff. I'm like, it's just a cough, y'all, I got allergies. I told you I had ADD, just keep up and get through it. Anyways, so there's all this stuff going on in the cloth, right? But what most people don't see is this. There's a face right here, 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. His arms, his shoulders are here. His arms come down and they're crossed right here at the wrist. And his legs come down, his knees are here, and his ankles are about here. The back side of his head is right here, and then his shoulders are right here. Small of his back, the knee pits are right there, and then his ankles are right there. So there's this scorch marks, blood, water, pollen, all this stuff on the cloth. But then oddly, there's this image of a man, and that's what we're going to try and figure out is what is that image of the man. So I used to have a lot longer piece of this, Martin. When you saw this last time, I had probably 15 minutes of unpacking this because whenever somebody had heard about the shroud, they said, well, in 1988 they carbon dated tested it. First of all, carbon dating, I hate it. It's just throw carbon dating out completely. If you want to go radioisotope dating, we can start talking crystal dating, all that stuff. But radiocarbon dating, so all I want to do for now is because everything I'm about to tell you about has been peer reviewed, meaning like the science that I'm going to share with you, the anomalies I'm going to share with you, the scientific community has had a chance to look over the evidence, rebut the evidence, send it back to the scientists, they repeat the studies, they go back and forth until finally the whole scientific community at large goes, okay, we accept that as science. So that's important to me because I don't want some shady science. I don't want some flaky science, I want good science, and so that's what I'm going to present. Why do I know you? That's right. What's up, dude? Your hat's down a little bit low, but I'm looking, I'm like, dude, I know you. What's up? How you doing, man? Who's your parents? That's right. That's right. Now, that was going to bug me. I had to just go ahead and get it out. Like, I was like, that's going to bug me. I know that guy. So anyway, so all I want to do is show you what technology was back in medieval times. 1220, this high technology. They had a 1220, they had the hamster wheel, right? The human hamster wheel. You get in the hamster wheel, you start walking, and what it does is it goes to this pulley system and pulls up the treadwheel crane, right? So high technology in 1220. Then we're going to fast forward. We're going to go all the way up to 1280. Anybody wear glasses? Okay, here's what you do from now on. You go, does anybody see my spectacles? Doesn't that just sound better? You go, where's my glasses? Just say spectacles. That's what they were originally called. Spectacles. That was 1280. And then finally, we got really high technology, y'all. 1498, the bristle toothbrush was invented. That was a game changer. Not sure what they did before that. Maybe just their bare finger. I'm not really just rinsing them out. I'm not really sure. Do you know? Did you go to put your hand up? Oh, I feel like if you know, please inform. Nobody's ever told me what they did before that. But here's the thing. I would rather my teeth rot out of my head than use this toothbrush, because here's the first toothbrush. Take a piece of bone, and you cut the back of the hog hairs off, you tie it to there and brush your teeth.
Yeah.
Not doing it. I'd rather look like a European than do that. So, here's the, that was way funnier than y'all would do. So, this is only about a year and a half old, maybe. It's very, very new. They concluded that there, what does that say? Okay, this is interactive. What does that say? You gotta like move, make sure you're still alive. I'm not the only one I'm talking. So they concluded their peer-reviewed research said this dates back to the first century. It's 2,000 years old. And here's what they did. I have a museum. You saw my museum, Martin. I don't do it anymore. It's sitting in a warehouse. You want it? I'll give it to you. You're going to use it. I have a museum. In my museum, I have 2,000 plus year old papyrus samples, right? And so the papyrus, I take and put it under a microscope so that people can look at it, because when papyrus breaks down, it's sugar crystals when it breaks down. It's really cool. It's got like, you can see it under the microscope, little microscopic sugar crystals. Same thing happens with cloth because of its natural position. It actually breaks down into sugar crystals. So what they did was they took the cloth and they put it under an X-ray microscope, and they X-rayed down to look at the amount of crystallization that's done on it. That's something I trust. That's a dating method I'm all about. I can take that. So that whole medieval thing, it's just to the wind. So we're going to do this and say, okay, it's called the Shroud of Turin to this day because it's stored in the Turin Cathedral in Italy. That's why it gets the name Shroud of Turin. Everybody says, well, where was it up until 1300s when it shows up over in France? Where was it up to that time? I'm going to make the argument, as many scholars do, to say the Mendelian of Edessa is what most people refer to it as. And what that is you have the whole cloth. You fold it once, you have just the front. You fold it twice, you have the torso. Fold it a third time, you have just the face. And like a t-shirt, you fold the arms in on itself to display the artwork. And so they would do that same thing, which is why we have these two long scorch marks going down here. Because when it was in that fire, it scorched the outsides of it. And so when you unfold it, you get that continuous line. And that's why you get these things. Now you see how it was folded in there. When it dripped through here, it dripped through all layers. And so now you pull it apart, get that vapor angel effect. So that's where it was. So let's take a look at this. This is in 544 AD, long before the medieval times, just for the record. And there's this painting of this moment where there's this face over the city gate that the city of Edessa is about to get ransacked, it's about to get burned down to the ground. Nothing's going to be left. And so they thought whatever this was so important, they needed to stop what they were doing and go get it over the city gate. And then on top of that, there was an artist that said, you know what? This moment is so spectacular, I need to paint a picture and capture the moment that we saved this thing. So I'm probably the oldest person in this room. Anyways, for the old timers in here, back in the day, if your house was on fire, what do you save? Pictures. Because once the pictures were gone, you couldn't. Now everything's stored on the cloud. I don't know where this cloud is, but it cost me $10 a month. I have yet to see it yet, but it's out there, has my pictures on it. Back in the day, if your pictures got burned in a fire, they're gone. You couldn't get them back. So whatever this was so important that they decided to do that. So let's fast forward to the 10th century. This is King Algaris now of Edessa. He's displaying exactly the same type of thing. We've got this cloth with this face image on it. And so again, we're seeing in the city of Edessa that this thing keeps showing back up, right? So now let's look at it and say, okay, if we know where it is, did it have any influence on art? Now, I've got probably 40 of these, and we're only going to go through 2, because for the sake of time, I'm just going to go through. I could talk about this literally for 2 weeks straight. That's how much research has been done on the Shroud. It's the most ridiculed, investigated, interrogated ancient artifact of all history. Nothing has gone through the scrutiny like this has. People for generations have tried to replicate it, make it go away, try to come up with some sort of natural explanation, and you're going to see why they can't in just a minute. But when I take the gold coin on the left, superimpose it with the shroud on the right, it's a perfect fit. Now, that doesn't mean my argument is this, well, that means it's the face of Jesus. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is the artist who made the coinage thought that if they used the Shroud of Turin, or what would have been known as the Mendelian of Edessa at that time, that they were coining Jesus' face, right? So that was one influence. Again, I've got dozens and dozens of these. I'm only going to give you 2. This comes from 550 AD, Christ the Pantocrator from Mount Sinai. And if you're like, I know you would never do this, so I'm going to use this as an example. You go into a store and steal a pack of gum, right? So you're on camera stealing this pack of gum, but it's kind of pixelated. It's got bad footage, they can't quite make you out. So you go into court, and what they're going to do is they're going to pull that footage up, and they're going to look for what's called points of congruence. And that's going to be like the length of the tip of the eye to the tip of the eye, or the middle of the nose to the tip of the eye, or the tip of the nose to the tip of the chin. All these different things are called points of congruence. Anybody open their phone just by looking at it? It's using points of congruence. That's how they recognize facial features as points of congruence. If there were 20 points of congruence, that matched you to the video footage, you'd be held guilty of stealing the pack of gum, which you would never do. So, this thing has over 20 or 200 points of congruence from the pantocrator to the shroud, meaning it lines up over 200 different points, which means it's 10 times guilty of being that of the Mandelian of Odessa again. So where was the shroud all those years? I think it was influencing art. Now they've known where it was this whole time. There's actually a lot more I can go into to unpack that, but I think that satisfies my desire to want to know where it is. So we're going to talk about the image. That's why we're all here, to talk about what is the image. Ready? I have no clue. Yep, no idea. About this time you're going to walk out and throw bananas at me, but I have not had hands-on experience with it. I'm only going through all the research that I've put in over the past 15 years, 17 years of research, 15 years of presenting. I'm just telling you what I found. I'm going to let you hear what the expert has to say, because I know right now you're looking at me like, why in the world are you standing here talking about this thing? You don't know what it is.
And at that point in time, I knew that whatever this was, it wasn't a painting.
Nor is it a drawing, or a photograph, or a scorch mark. So what made the image? After 30 years of intensive analysis, the scientists who examined the shroud still have no idea.
Take it from them. They're the ones who have had hands-on access to the shroud, and they have no idea what caused it. And here's why. This is where it starts to get deep, okay? Remember, everything I'm about to tell you over the next 15 minutes has been peer-reviewed. So it's not funny science. It's the scientific community can't challenge what I'm about to tell you. The image is actually superficial. Are there any artists in here? Anybody? Art? Okay, I'm going to hire you, right? I need you to paint this for me, right? But you can't use any paints, pigments, oils, dyes, powders, resins, or any other medium to do it with, because it's not on the shroud. So you've got to create it, but you can't use any mediums. Okay? Is that easy enough? It's like, what? That doesn't even make sense. I'm going to make it worse though. Here's why. Because the image of, now wrap your head around this. The image of the man is only on the first 2 microfibers of one single thread. And here's what I mean by that. Anybody ever tried to thread a needle before? You're sewing? Oh, I get PTSD thinking about it, because you take the needle, or you take the thread, you don't do this with the needle, that would be bad. Take the thread, you go lift the thread, gotta get it all stuck together. Then you take the needle, you make a really ugly face, you're lining it up like this. And about the time you think you've got the thread through the eye of the needle, you reach around, you grab it, and it's you're still making the ugly face because you're worried. And then you pull and half of it stays behind. Oh, you had it happen? Oh, you don't lick it? I'm 51 and I just now learned that. Now I'm gonna have to go home and try and thread a needle without licking it. You don't really? Does it cause it to like separate? I never even thought it. You're logical right now. Having a moment. Okay, so the reason why you try and thread it and then half of it stays behind is because every thread is composed of 70 to 120 microfibers. I mean, we're talking something as thin or thinner than a spider web thread. And you have 120 of those spun together. This is kind of what it looks like. This isn't even close to 70 to 120, but if you had a single thread, the image of the man is only on the first 2 microfibers. That's why I said you can't use any paints, pigments, oils, dyes, powders, resins, or any other medium, because as soon as you touch the cloth, it's going to penetrate all the way through the cloth. Not just through one thread, it's going to penetrate through every single thread that's in there. That's why you can't use any mediums whatsoever. That is an anomaly. They can't figure out what the image is because it's technically not there. What does superficial mean? It's just on the surface. It's not, you ever met a superficial person? You'll understand what superficial means. Yeah.
When you say what the image is, you don't mean what it looks like. You mean what it's made of.
What is it made of? What's it composed of? Yeah, what's it composed of? Like I said, we know all the blood, and the water, and the scorch, and the torch, and the burns, and the pollens, and the limestone, and we sit. 3M put together a special tape that they were able to put the tape down, put it onto the thread, onto the shroud, and then pull it, and it removed portions of the dust that was on there, and there's pollens that come from just in Jerusalem. There's limestone on his feet that come from tombstones in Jerusalem. So if this were some medieval, European forgery, somebody had to travel to Israel and get just the right pollens, just the right limestone, and apply it. It starts to get more ridiculous the more you learn about the shroud. But when they put the tape on the image of the man, they couldn't pull anything off. There's nothing to pull off. But it's there. You see it. And it's gonna get even better, because this is gonna be the hardest part of the whole talk. If we can get through this, we're all gonna be good. Are you ready? Ready to take a deep breath in, deep breath out. Okay, here we go. The image on the left is positively what you see. See it right here? This is what you see. In 1898, Segunda Pia was the first person who was petitioned to take a picture of it. And back in the day, you don't just take a picture, it's on Instagram within 2 seconds. You actually have to take a picture and you put it under a solution, a liquid solution. And there was a red light in the room, it's called a dark room, but there was a red light, and the red light wouldn't affect the way that the negative turned out. And so you would take the negative, right? You would develop that, and then you would take the negative and put it into a machine that would blast the image onto your photo paper and turn it into a picture. So if you've ever seen these things, that's what I'm talking about. You ever seen those? Young people don't know what the process is, but I know you've seen those in grandma's photos, right? But you notice how weird it is? All the lights and darks are reversed. If you pick it up and hold it up to the light, all the lights and darks are reversed. What's that?
Making me feel really old right now.
I feel old because they don't know what it
Older than you.
No. No. Where's your grades? I look like I'm 78. Every time I give this, I feel old because this generation looks at me like, what are you talking about? I just snap a picture and it's on Instagram, which is true. Now you got, and everything's stored on this cloud, like all digitally stored on the cloud, which is cool because you can take it into Photoshop. So here we go. You ready? Okay, if I can get through this is here we go. This is positively what you see. When you take the positive and you turn it into a negative, the negative turns into a positive, which means the positive is actually a negative. Did you get that? Who got that? Okay, I'm going to go a little bit slower because this is hard. It's a strength kind. Okay, so this is positively what you see. If you just look at it, that's what you see. But what it is, it's actually a negative image. Because when you take it and you turn it into a negative, it flips into a positive. You want to see something cool? Come here. Come here. I'm going to show you something cool. Watch this. I got my phone set to where you can reverse it's called classic invert. Watch this. You're gonna be like, what? Now, if you don't go, what? I'm gonna be very disappointed. Yeah, come. Okay. All right. So look, I got my camera on, right? And it's just normal, right? Now watch. I'm gonna hit my button 3 times. It's gonna invert it. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Boom. Look at that. It's a positive image of a man. You see it? And look, you can come down here, and now all of a sudden, his arms are crystal clear. Look at his fingers. Look, they don't really look like much here, but when you do this, isn't that cool? What? They get the what? There you go. Awesome. I mean, if you didn't get the what, it didn't really happen. No, I'm not paying with my Sky Miles account. Okay, back there. If you hit it twice, it's your credit card. If you hit it 3 times, it inverts your colors, just so you didn't know. So, I'm going to hire you to make me a picture, but you can't use any paints, pigments, oils, dyes, resins, powders, or anything like that because it can't be on oil with just the first 2 microfibers of a single thread. And I need you to do it in a negative format. So that way when the camera's invented several hundred years later, we can fool those people. Because think about it. How would you conceptualize what a negative is until the camera came out to produce a negative? There's no way you could wrap. I'm in a room with you trying to explain it on this side of the story, and it's already hard to understand. Can you imagine 700 years ago? You're like, you want me to what? But that's not even where it gets the best. Look, when you take the whole body, look, there's a positive image of a man. You can now easily, what was used to be kind of vague, and you probably missed it if you've never seen the Shroud before, now it's very apparent. Now you can easily see his hairline, you can see his nose is broke right there. You can see his eye right here is nearly closed shut. You can see the blood marks around his head. All these are wounds. His arms coming across down over right here. You can see the wrist wound right there from the spike. You can come down here and see the ankle wound right here. All of it becomes very apparent. You can see his kneecaps right here. You can see all of it becomes very apparent. Isn't that crazy? I mean, that's like, what? How does that even work? But it gets even better. Actually, last night met a lady, actually the pastor's wife. Her mom used to take these photographs. She knew exactly what I was talking about. She worked for the space, aerospace, whatever division. And so what they did was they'd have these satellites. This was back before, now we got rovers that go to Mars and takes 3 amazing, quality pictures and all that video and stuff. Back in the day, we had satellites that would go up, take pictures of the moon, take pictures of Mars, and what it would do is it was a very special photograph that would go inside of the VP8 analyzer, and it would spit out a topographical map of the surface of Mars or the surface of the moon, so we would know if there was craters or if there was valleys or if there was mountains or something like that, right? So it's a very special photograph. If I take a picture of you and put it in there, it's not going to work. The light to dark contrast are not set up in such a way that VP8 analyzer can read it. But when you put the VP8 analyzer to work, here's what happens. This guy, listen to what he says. The image is superficial, meaning it's not really there. So it's just on the surface, right? The superficial image, listen to what he says about it.
When you look at this shroud, you have the impression that it's a picture, but it's not a picture at all. It's a database of information.
It's a database of information. That's coming from the experts. I'm just telling you what they said. Here's why he said that. You take a picture of the shroud, you put it inside the VP8 analyzer, it spits out a topographical map of a man. Look. Isn't that insane? It literally has 3-dimensional qualities built into it. So now I need you to paint me a picture that has no paints, oils, pigments, dyes, and dyes, because it's on the first 2 microfibers in a negative format, and I need you to encrypt it with 3-dimensional imagery. This is why, as you can tell through the years, I've gotten a little more transparent about what I think about this thing, because as I've been presenting, these things keep coming up. I'm like, again, this is all peer reviewed. As a matter of fact, if you want to see the totality on how they got to some of this, History Channel's got a show called The Real Face of Jesus, and it's good. It's an excellent documentary, really well done, but it's fascinating because it's literally encrypted with 3-dimensional information. How can a superficial image be loaded with 3-dimensional qualities? That doesn't make any sense to me. So here's the thing: if you want to be a millionaire, now we've just only shown you just a few of them so far, the anomalies. Just go repeat it. I've already told you the characteristics that you have to match. Just go repeat it. This guy will give you $1 million. That challenge is 1.5 years old. It's still on the table. Maybe 2 years old. Still on the table. Why? Because people can't do it. They've tried and tried and tried. You know how many dozens of people have tried to replicate it and they can't even get close. If they hit one target area, they miss 3 others. And so let's start to get to the. I don't know how I feel about this, to be honest with you. They've taken AI and I can tell you that's a whole lot closer to what Jesus looked like versus that blonde-haired, blue-eyed Fabio that's hanging on crosses all over the place. I mean, he was a 1st century Jewish man in desert land of Israel. I mean, Middle Eastern man. He was not blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus. He's probably even a little bit darker than that. Because if you look at Middle Eastern Arabs, they're very, very dark skinned. So I don't know how I feel about that. So let's just start to land the plane. What could have discolored the image on the cloth? Let's come down to the nuts and bolts of this is the latest, greatest research. This is as close as we've come to an explanation. And if this doesn't blow your mind, I don't know what will. Because this is as close as they come.
The most popular theory of image formation on the shroud today is that of some form of energy or radiation being transmitted from the body enshrouded in the cloth.
From the body.
To the cloth itself.
Is it possible that during the resurrection, Christ's body turned to light, giving off the radiation which imprinted his image on the shroud?
Now that's the closest theory we have. It was some radiological event that went from the body to the shroud. Not like a radiological event like an X-ray where it shoots down through and captures it. This came from the inside out. Is it possible? Okay, give me scripture. Let's make this biblical. Bam! Mount of Transfiguration. Good job. You want a sticker? In my mind, I just ran.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. There's how to Mount Transfiguration, he stands there, and he's literally from toe to head, lit up from the inside out. Moses and Elijah look him over and say, yep, you're the one. What about giving somebody else? Give me another one. There's another example in Scripture. There's another one. Yep.
When Mary came to Jesus and he was talking, he said, you can't touch me.
No, this was literally an illumination event.
I don't remember the exact reference, but they talk about his face shine like the sun.
Yeah! Toss her the football. You get a sticker too. When Moses came down off the mountain, his face was literally lit so bright that they were like, dude, cover that thing up. I don't know if that was proper Hebrew or not, but you get the point. They were like, they couldn't even look at it. So I think what this could be, and again, it's the best explanation so far, it's a snapshot of the first second of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. It's literally the moment that God said, breathe, and his body, bam, shot this massive. Now, here's the thing. Have you ever seen the fertilization of an egg in the womb?
Mm-hmm.
What happens? Throw the football at her. The flash of light goes through from where? The inside of the egg. There you go. Good throw. The spark of light flashes through the center of the egg upon the evidence of what? Life. What happened to Jesus when he was laying there? Life was put back into his body. In the same way that God has. Because where are you going to get a spark from? It's a zinc spark. Where are you going to get that from? God. Don't evolutionize my way of thinking and tell me that's some sort of evolutionary product. Come on. You think I was born yesterday? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So just in the same way, so we've got all these examples of, but here's what really set this off was this picture right here. So the shroud fingers are so long that they were like, oh, it's not anatomically correct. It's got to be a forgery because they didn't even get the fingers right. What kind of freak fingery is that, you know? Well, here's the thing. Where does your finger stop if you x-ray it? Way back down in here. It's down in the middle of your hand. It's not, that's an x-ray right there. Put it side by side and you've got an exact thing. You can also see the teeth on a skull coming over and see the teeth coming across here. So here's another thing about this. Everybody understand that this is where the spike went. It was not through the hand, because if it went through the hand, it would have just ripped. That soon would have been, he would have just been dangling off there. What they did was they put it right through here at the base of the wrist, and that's known as the space of death stop between those two bones. In that space of death stop is the median nerve, and if you take your thumb and press right there on your median nerve, you're going to feel this pressure go up into your thumb. And if you have carpal tunnel, you'll really know what I'm talking about. And the reason for that is because that median nerve runs up and is directly connected. When they put the spike through his wrist, it split the median nerve in half, collapsing the thumb on itself. So why does the guy not have any thumbs on the shroud? Because he was crucified. You can see the wrist wound going straight through his wrist right here. And that he has no thumbs because he was crucified. So there's all these kind of just little details. And one of the first things I ever noticed when I went to pick this up was hanging up when I got there. Here's the spear wound right here. This big collection of blood right there. So if you're laying on your back and you're bleeding out of your right side, that looks like your left side, but that's because it's a mirror image when you pull the cloth off. If you lay on your back, liquid falls in the path of least resistance. The smaller your back is where it's going to collect. Here's the back of his head, shoulders, the smaller his back, his buttocks are right there. Here's where it's all collected. Again, if this were a forgery, they've got to think through those minutiae little details like that to get things right in order for it to really fool us, you know? And so that was, but here's what I want you to really hear.
The Telegraph reports the scientists say the technology that would have been needed to create the marks on the shroud simply was not available in medieval times. They concluded that the exact shape, texture, and depth of the imprints on the cloth could only be produced with the aid of ultraviolet lasers, technology that was clearly not available in medieval times. In case there was any doubt about the preternatural degree of energy needed to make such distinct marks, the report spells it out. This degree of power cannot be reproduced by any normal UV source built to date.
So there's no way they were going to do it in the medieval times, right? There's no way we can do it now. We still don't have the mechanics necessary to put together a machine that can produce that much radiation at one point in time, powerful enough to make an imprint on the cloth. So could it be a medieval forgery? There's absolutely no way. But this is where I'm going to start to land the plane. Is it Jesus? That's a tough one. At least I thought it was. Anybody know who Gary Habermas is? If you don't, you need to find out who Gary Habermas is. He is the leading expert in the world on the resurrection. He is in the process of writing a 7,000-page magnum opus on the resurrection. He's actually had this divided into volumes because 7,000 pages is like this. So he's got volume 1 is out. It's like, I don't know how many thousand pages it is. My new evidence for my new argument for the resurrection is, if you can write 7,000 pages of evidence, guess what? It happened. There's just no way it didn't happen. Come on, you have to be a lunatic to make up 7,000 pages of historical accuracy in order to do that. So anyway, so first time I met Gary and started working with him, we came down to this question: is it Jesus? Because Gary is one of the leading experts on the Shroud. He's been presenting on the Shroud for probably 35 years. He's written a couple books on it and stuff. It's actually where I first learned about it. I bought his book for 25 cents in a used bookstore called Verdict on the Shroud. I still mess with it to this day. I'm like, I paid 25 cents for your useless book. You know? Okay, that was not quite as nice, was it? But Gary's one of those guys who pokes, and like, if you don't poke back, then you're not friends, so I ignore all the poking. But anyway, we get to this question: is it Jesus? And he goes, oh, that's easy. And I was like, huh, easy? Come on now, how do you figure? He goes, well, look, if you're going to teach Sunday school about Roman crucifixion and you want to be accurate, don't use the story of Jesus, because the uniqueness of Jesus was totally different than everybody else. I said, unpack that for me. He goes, look, Romans were experts on torture. They were so much experts on torture. You know how they made their whips? It's like, because remember, Jesus was originally gone into the Roman courts to be judged by Jewish standards first. That's why Pontius was like, take him to your own courts, you know? So he had to go through Jewish. So Jewish penalty was 40 lashes minus 1, 39 whips, right? I don't know why it was 40 minus 1, but it's just what they did. So they would have a 3-corded strand of leather, and they would hit 13 times. And 13 times, that would be 39 total hits. Well, the Romans were like, you know what? Your little leather, that's not good enough. They took the same leather whip, and they dipped their finger down into the sand, and they would melt lead down into that, and they would take glass, metal, and crushed goat skull, because crushed goat skull has such a sharp texture to it, that they would drip that and put it. So now, when they came down, they would have a double-walled lead with this glass, bone, and metal, and now when they came down and hit, not only would it break the capillaries worse than the leather would, but now it digs into your skin and rips the flesh with it. They were experts on torture. They were happy about torture. They documented their torture. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of first-century documentation of Roman crucifixion, because they wanted to get better. Oh, well, dude, this way it works better, you know? And so Gary was like, out of hundreds of written testimonies of crucifixion methods, right? There was only one ever written down about no broken legs, a spear wound, and a crown of thorns. Those 3 things are very unique and distinct to one written account found in the Gospels alone. So if you're going to teach Roman crucifixion, don't use the Gospels. And I was like, wow, that's interesting, because we know we have the spear wound right here. There it is. I love when the Shroud's with me, because normally I just put this up and I don't have it, but here it is. There's the spear wound right there. Would have come through the right side. We know that his legs weren't broke. I showed you his broken nose earlier. There's no breaks anywhere along his legs. And y'all have to understand, the reason why they would break the legs is because the most common cause of death is asphyxiation. Because what would happen was, they would dislocate your shoulders and then put you up on the cross like this. And technically, we always see his feet crossed. We have 2 artifacts that have the spikes still in the ankles. Both of them are on either side of the upright cross, and there was actually 2 spikes that went in, and so you would have to push up on those spikes. There was no wood platform under your feet. You have to push up on your spiked feet in order to exhale. You could inhale, but you couldn't exhale until you pushed up. So if they needed them to die faster, they would break their legs, and when they went up to break their legs, they couldn't push up anymore because they would asphyxiate themselves very quickly. They would die of suffocation. So that's why they'd come to him and break their legs. But Jesus was already dead when they got to him. And then finally, you've got the crown of thorns. And again, you can see the blood marks all the way around the top of the head and the back of the head. They're all over the place. Very unique, distinct drops of blood all over the place, matching what would have been more like a hat. I don't think it was this dainty little crown that we see, King Jesus hanging on the cross, and it's this pretty little dainty. No, this thing would have been a gnarly, bunch of wadded together thorns that they just smashed into his cranium. That's what it would have been. So he's got all three things that match the one account. So is it Jesus? Again, as I started off by saying, my faith does not rest in this. I just think it's like icing on the cake. The historical evidence is plenty, but man, this is like icing on the cake just to make people go, what? And so here's where we're going to land this. This is a little bit confusing. It says John immediately believed the blood. John chapter 20, verse 8. Finally, the other disciple who had reached the tomb first also went inside. He saw and believed. That's verse 8. Verse 9 says this. They still did not understand from Scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. That's a little confusing, except for Dave's Theology 101. This is just my theory altogether. If John runs in that tomb, and the image isn't on the other side. Remember, it's only on the first two microfibers of a single thread. It's not on the other side. So John comes in, and he walks in, and the body's not there. It's laid flat. He tears this thing back, looks in there, and all of a sudden, it was dark. It's been losing it's breaking down, so it's getting lighter as years have gone on. I'm sure it was darker at the time, and John, in his first century mind, was like, what? Kind of like Elizabeth's womb leapt when Mary walked in the room with Jesus in her womb. I think the same thing happened when John saw that. His spirit, man, just leapt a little bit. It was like, something's not right about it. So he just knew. Because it says he believed, but he still didn't understand. I'm thinking he saw the shroud and went, what? There's something inside of him. But here's my close. Barry believed the blood. Barry sadly, he's passed away a few years back. Super nice guy. Awesome man. I learned a lot from Barry. He was part of the 1978 team that went and did the research on it. He's the one who actually, he's a scientific photographer. He's the one who actually created this shroud. That's why I know it's one of 5, because they only made 5. And I was fortunate enough to get one of only 5 that were ever made. So that dates back to 1978 when he made that as a digital copy of it. It's about as close as we get to see it. So anyways, talking with Barry, and we get to this point where he was like, Dave, I don't have a horse in the race. I said, what do you mean? He goes, I'm Jewish. Oh, that's interesting. Why in the world would a Jewish man spend 30 to 40, almost 50 years by the time he died, maybe even a little bit more, of his life spent on researching and presenting on the shroud? I mean, he would go to Europe, where the shroud is stored in Italy. He would go there and present on the shroud. He would be at symposiums where there was thousands, tens of thousands of people would come, and Barry was one of the main presenters. He's got Shroud.com. I asked him, how in the world did you get that? Like, that had to cost an arm and a leg. He goes, I got it before Alan Gore invented the internet. Okay, if you're old enough, you'll remember that one. So he's got Stera Inc., the largest collection. So anyways, I asked him, I said, well, if you're Jewish, then why do you believe that's the shroud? He was unashamedly say that's the shroud of Jesus of Nazareth. He wouldn't say Jesus Christ, but he would say Jesus of Nazareth. And he couldn't quite understand the miraculous nature of it. He would try and get around that some ways, but ultimately speaking, he couldn't get around certain things. And one of them was, he said, in 1978, he came into the room. Alan Adler was another Jewish man, worked for NASA and other places, smart guy. They turned the corner, and as both the Jewish men turned the corner, they looked at it and they said, it's a fake. I said, why? He goes, because the blood is still red. And if you come up and look at it, it's kind of got a reddish tint to it. It's a bronze reddish tint everywhere, all the blood. And he goes, everybody knows that blood right there should be nearly black. It should be almost the same color as that scorched burn right there. Because when blood hits the air and it oxidizes, it turns almost such a dark brown that it's almost black. He said, when it was red, I knew it was a fake. For 30 years, all the research starts coming up. It's only on the first 2 microfibers of a single thread. It's actually a negative image. It's got 3-dimensional qualities. All these things start coming up. And he's like, I get it, but the blood. So all of a sudden, he says, one day he's driving down the road, and Alan calls him up and says, Alan says, are you sitting down, Barry? And he says, no, I'm driving. He goes, pull over. Barry pulls the car over, and he knew something was up. He's like, okay, I'm parked. What? He goes, I know why the blood's red. And Barry was like, I saw 30 years flash before my eyes. And he says, what is the deal? So Alan volunteered or started working for doing some research at body farms. And body farms is where you can be an organ donor, but you can also be a cadaver donor. You can donate your entire cadaver to science, and they'll take your cadaver and do different research. And part of it is they'll put a dead body under a tree, they'll put it in the trunk of a car, they'll put it in a bathtub, they'll put it wherever, and then they'll analyze, by hour the decomposition process, because it's different if you're laying in a bathtub versus laying under a tree or in the trunk of a car. And so they'll document that. So now when an investigator comes up on crime, they find a dead body that's laying under this tree, they can do reverse forensics and go, okay, according to the decomposition process that we see, this body's been here for 2 weeks, 2 days, and 2 hours. Who was John Doe with 2 weeks, 2 days, and 2 hours ago, And so that way they can start to solve a crime. Well, here's what they found. This blew me away. When victims of complete trauma would come into their body farm, I can't believe they call them body farms, but anyways, when they would come into the body farm, when the person suffered blood loss that was beyond repair, beyond the body's ability to reproduce, because the body can only make so much blood at a time. That's why if you go to give blood, you can't give it all, you can only give a little bit, come back a few days and give some more, but you've got to give the body time to build that blood back up. When a person's body came in that was suffered so much traumatic trauma to whether decapitation, loss of limbs, open organs, any of those things, when the body came in and was laid down on a bed, per se, to watch the decomposition process, what was excreted from the bodies onto the cloth on the bed wasn't exactly blood anymore. It was a serum known as bilirubin, because bilirubin comes up out of the liver. When the body's dying, it's trying to fix itself, and it's saying, hey, I need blood to pump to the veins in order to stay alive, because blood is the life source to the flesh. And so the heart's saying, I need blood. The body's saying, I don't have any. The heart's like, go to the liver, pull up what you can. Let's see what we can get out of this. And when bilirubin is being pumped through the veins upon death, when they die, what's actually coming out now isn't blood anymore. It's bilirubin that's leaking out of their wounds. Bilirubin is high in iron. What happens to iron when it oxidizes? Turns red. That is a copper red color because it's not exactly blood anymore that's coming out. It's bilirubin. Well, here's the thing. Let's just trash that. Just trash it. Just make it go away. I don't even care about it anymore. When I heard that day, it wrecked me for at least 2 weeks. I could barely breathe for 2 weeks. Because see, I had watched The Passion of the Christ. I had studied Roman crucifixion methods. I conceptually knew all that. But what I hadn't really thought about was this. He was the ultimate sacrifice. Okay, going back to the garden, this is why I love God and I love the scriptures, because man can't do something like this. Back in the garden, Adam and Eve sinned against God, right? They try to fix it themselves by cutting the fig leaves and putting them over themselves. And God looks down and goes, no, nice try, but you can't cover your sins that way. The next paragraph, it says this: God himself provided for them the animal skins to cover themselves. The first time they provided for themselves, the second time God provided for them animal skins. What has to happen to the animal in order to provide the skins? It's got to die. You've got to shed blood. This is why I love God, and I love Christianity, I love the Bible, and I love theology, because man can't come up with this. The very first solution that God had to cover sin was the exact same solution that he sent to the cross some 4,000 years later and said, I'm taking care of it once and for all. In the exact same manner, blood was shed to cover the sins of all now. Well, here's the thing. I've done a lot of study on Old Testament sacrifice. Prophecy is my other area of expertise. I've done a lot of study on it. In order for the sacrifice to be acceptable to God, it had to be bled out. The blood could not remain in the meat. Why? Because blood is the life source to the flesh. What is Jesus? God, man in the flesh. God, man in the flesh, had to be drained out of his blood. Scrap this. I'm not even talking about this anymore. I'm simply talking about theology that says in order for him to have been the perfect sacrifice, he had to have bled out every drop. He couldn't have had any blood left in the system, which is why we would find this if this is this. But scrap that. Here's the thing. Man, when he said it is finished, it took on a whole new meaning for me. But now it is finished, what that meant to me was, Father, I'm done. I have not even a drop left to give. It is finished, and he took his last breath. He became the acceptable sacrifice. Well, here's the thing, man. In order for him to bleed out that much blood, do you know how much torture he had to have endured? Like I said, I had studied it and I had conceptualized it, but that day it wrecked me to think how bad he had to have been beaten. I mean, the fact that he only made it a few hours on the cross should tell us enough. The fact that he had to fall and Simon had to pick up his palabra and carry it should tell us enough. But the fact that all of a sudden it hit me, he had to be bled out to be the perfect sacrifice. And this is who he died for. That guy. I conceptually know that's me, but I don't know who that is. That was right. I know where that picture was taken. I know the house I was at. And the 115-pound meth addict. I was a homeless guy. I'd abandoned my family for 9 months. I was hopeless. I was suicidal. I was an atheist. And you know what's cool? He didn't tell me, you got to clean up before you come to my house. Put down that meth and then you can come and talk to me. Clean up your language, you northerner. And your F-bombs. Clean that stuff up. Make sure you learn Christianese before you come into my house. He didn't say any of that. When I was spitting in his face, he died for me. He did that knowing that this guy was the one who was going to need his salvation. He bled out every last drop for that. And I'm just here to tell you, I know who that guy was. I wouldn't give a drop of blood for him. That was some dark days. So I leave you with this. There's my book. And in that book, when he saved me, in that book, it's loaded with nasty junk. I mean, it's just junk. There's stuff in that book that even my wife doesn't know about. I've been married for 30 years, and together longer than that. She doesn't know about it because I was molested when I was a kid. My uncle did stuff to me for years that caused me to just have a warped reality on morality, really. I just didn't know how to, and I didn't grow up a Christian. I grew up an atheist for the first 29 years of my life. So I had a very warped view on what morality and ethics was. That's a lot of stuff in that book that is just terrible. It's embarrassing. That's why my wife, you know who knows about it? Jesus. After I came to Jesus, he and I talked about everything. We laid it all out on the table. She knows about most of it, but me and Jesus laid it all out on the table. And he said, you know what? You're forgiven. Because I'm going to share the gospel with you. It's going to be the fastest gospel you've ever heard in your entire life. But sometimes I think we overcomplicate the gospel. We add to it a lot of times. And it's like, don't add to it. And his book is perfection. Probably just pure white pages, to be honest with you, but if there was anything written in there, it's perfect, it's good, it's admirable, it's righteous, it's holy, it's praiseworthy. Those are the things in his book. Are you ready for the gospel of Jesus Christ? Ready? Everybody ready? 1, 2, 3. This is the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's that simple. He says, look, I'm going to take my cover, put on yours, yours is on mine. And guess what? Now when the Father opens up my book, what's in there? Perfect whiteness, pureness. If anything's written in there, it's righteous, it's holy, it's praiseworthy, it's good, it's perfect. When God opens up that book with his face on it, that's all my stuff in there. It says all is appointed for all men appointed once a time to die and then face judgment. The book of life will be open. My book of life, 21 years, however long it's been, 21 years ago, changed 22 years ago, changed completely. When I just simply allowed him to take over my life, just give it to him in full surrender. He didn't go 90% of the way for you. He gave 100% for you. That's how much you mean to him. That's how valuable you are to him. I don't think we look at ourselves that way sometimes. I don't think we walk around with we should walk around with I can't put my chest out anymore. My stomach sticks out too far. Okay, that was funny. You can laugh. I'm a fat guy. We should walk around with our chest puffed up like, I am a Christian, hear me roar. When we walk into a room, I love it when I'm on a work site, all of a sudden they're like, say that, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But I love their attitude towards it. It's like, you can't say a swear in front of him. He's a man of God. That's how you should walk into a room. That's a woman of God right there. I'm not going to try and hit on her and make her go home with me tonight. I'm going to court her because she's a woman of God. I'm going to treat her because she's the apple of God's eye. That's how you should be walking around. But unfortunately, you know how many prescriptions to college-age students there are in America? 42 million prescriptions of Adderall to college-age students. That's just the students getting the prescriptions. they're taking it and giving it to their friends. So I would at least double that, say 84 million college students are on Adderall. You know what Adderall is? A lower form of meth. You know what the number one cause of suicide, I just gave it to you, in teenagers is? Suicide. You know what the CDC marks it as? Accidental death. That's why it doesn't show up on your radar. Look it up. Don't take anything. Everything I'm saying, go study for yourself. But if suicide rates are the number one killer in teenagers, and Adderall is the number one killer in college-age students because it's causing depression, we've got a problem. We should be walking around like this is our book cover now. If we're born-again Jesus freaks, we should be walking around that way. And if you're not walking around that way, I would petition you, whose book are you using? Because I'm not just talking about when you cross the heavenly gates. I'm talking right now. Whose book are you using for life? I stopped using my book, and I don't want you can keep that book, burn that book. I don't want anything to do with that book. I know what that book has in it. I just keep it. Amen? I almost called you pastor. Are you pastor?
I am.
Yeah, that's why I was going to call you pastor.
All right, y'all join me in thanking Dave for the presentation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pray for us, and then Dave is willing to stick around to answer any questions you might have. Not too many, because he's got a 3 a.m. He's got to wake up at 3 to go to another speaking engagement. Glad y'all came. Hope you enjoyed the presentation. Download the app.
Oh, one other thing.
Yep.
We just had a guy, this is so new, that's why I talk about it. I run a camp. I run camps called Quick Retreats. They're apologetics camps, so it's like you're gonna have a blast. We're gonna sing Kumbaya and eat s'mores, you know. But we're gonna teach you apologetics while you're there for the whole week. We're going to give you tools in your toolbox that you're gonna leave completely changed. You're gonna be walking around bold as Christians. This is open to
comment.
All right, Dave, if you wanna come up, I'm sure there's some questions. clarification.
I'll put up the scratch for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a slide that you had, $1 million was worth. And it said something about the carbon dating.
Yeah.
From the British Museum.
Yeah.
What date did they come up with?
So in 1988,
Dave, can you repeat the question too?
he was asking when they were talking about the carbon dating, what date did they come up with? They came up with 1290 to 1330. It was sent to 3 different labs that came up with those 3 dates. Later on, Ray Rogers from Los Alamos Laboratories found out that the 8-centimeter piece that they took off the corner for the testing actually had different fibers woven into it. It's called a French invisible weave. And so when they actually dissected one fiber from the next, one thread from the next, retested those. That's why I don't present it, because it's not peer reviewed, but in the Shroud community, they know that the mixed fibers in there, some of them gave off a 1290 to 1330 because it would have been when the French were in there making the repairs to it. The other fibers, supposedly, again, it's not peer reviewed, tested back to the 1st century. So.
If this is Jesus' shroud, how tall was he?
He was about 5'11", 5'10" and a half. Yeah. Yeah. He asked how tall was Jesus. Well, you gotta think, he was also one of those where it talks about, like, when he was walking through the crowds, people could see him. And so if you're walking through a crowd and you're 4 foot tall, nobody can see. I could imagine he walked with a little bit of stature when he came into a place, and was probably, your average Jewish person's around 5'6". So if he was 5'10", 5'10" and a half, he's gonna be just a little taller than everybody. You're never gonna be able to see him as he comes through there. Or they climb a tree to see him, whichever one works better. Yeah.
So what was the shroud made of?
What's the shroud made of? It's a cotton. It's a 1st century herringbone weave cotton polyester mix. It's mostly cotton though. Good question. I don't know if I've ever been asked that question before. Want a sticker? Sure. Here, you get a sticker. So we had a cartoonist that worked for our ministry, and I asked him to draw a caricature of me, and he drew that. It looks like Captain Caveman, if you remember who Captain Caveman was. Anybody else? Yeah.
I've heard before that there's an idea that this was the tablecloth of the Last Supper.
I really want to think that's awesome. I don't know about that. There's no way we could ever know, but the fact that you've even heard that is cool to me. That's kind of an inside Shrouders little thing. But again, it may have been. The reason why people think that, where was he going to find a cloth that big, that size at that time? Like a 1-piece herringbone, that's not a cheap cloth, And so that begs the question, was Joseph of Arimathea, if you could tie Joseph of Arimathea to the upper room, like if he had residence or at least some sort of occupancy to it, I could go there. Yeah, I don't know if you heard that. He said there's rumors that it was the tablecloth used for the Last Supper. It's cool to think about.
Did you have a whip with you last time?
What's that?
I remember you having a
I did, yeah. I had a whip. I had a Crown of Thorns replica. I had the
I
spikes.
wish you'd bring that whip. That would have been awesome.
Well, when you get on an airplane with a whip, they don't.
That would be good.
That might get flagged.
Yeah.
It's a flagellum, so get it. Okay, that was way funnier than y'all alluded to. It's decent. It literally is called a flagellum. Yeah.
So the Shroud seems to be a man with long hair. He said like 5'11".
5'10", 5'11", somewhere there.
What do you think Jesus of the Gospels would be around the height of Jewish men with short hair? Since that's what they were as well.
A lot of the Jewish people have long hair. They still have long hair to this day, but they just have it right here mostly because they don't know where the corners of your beard are. So they all walk around with. Have you ever been to Israel? Are you a youth pastor?
this stuff happen?
Yeah.
No.
You're close
But
enough.
with youth, yeah.
I can get you there for $800 if you wanna go. I'm not even joking. It's a $6,000-7,000 trip. I can get you there for $800, so talk to me afterwards. Anybody else a youth pastor? What's that? It's for youth pastors. It's Christians United for Israel. They take youth, I'm associated with them, they take youth pastors to Israel. It's a $7,000 trip, but they offer to, you pay $800 to get yourself to New York and back. That they cover the rest of it. And when I say they cover the rest of everything, they cover the rest of everything. But it'll change your life. My point, when you walk around Jerusalem, it's just funny because they all have this long thing. You might be thinking of the Galilean Creed. There's no evidence that Jesus would have taken, not the Galilean, the Nazarene Creed. Thank you. There's no evidence historically or anything that he would have, because he was from Nazareth, people are like, well, he must have taken the Nazarene Creed. That creed was for a very specific type of priest that would have taken that creed. So they would have cut their hair. They would have, I think most Jews of that day probably had long hair, longish hair. So there's certainly no reason why he wouldn't have had long hair. He looked a lot like Christian.
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
In John's gospel, he says something about.
Oh, I love you. Go for it.
That there's that some sort of cloth that is on Jesus had folded up. Is this what that would have been, or?
Throw him in the football. Yeah, I love that question. When he was first, just like we do today, when somebody dies, the first thing you do is you cover their face just out of dignity. You put something over their face. And so when he came down off the cross, they would have put a cloth over his face. When they got to the tomb, they would have taken the cloth, set it to the side, and then put him in the wrap, temporarily at least, until the women got there. And so yes, they found the folded cloth outside on a little rim of where the tomb was. Well, here's the thing. That cloth is known as the Sudarium of Oviedo. We still have it. It's called the Sudarium of Oviedo. It's in a museum. When you take that cloth and you put it over top of the Shroud of Turin, the bloodstains that are on the Sudarium match the bloodstains that are on the cross identically. However, the Sudarium doesn't have an image on there. That image that we've been talking about, because it wasn't on him at the time of the resurrection, they had taken it off of him, set it to the side. So then there's another side note with that's just awesome. That man, when somebody would get up from the table and they were done, they would leave their napkin crumpled up, on their plate, and then the servant knew that the master was done. Well, when they folded it, that means they were coming back. I'm running to the restroom or whatever I've got to do. So the fact that he folded, when Jesus was resurrected, he went and folded that napkin. I'll be back. He told Arnold Schwarzenegger on this. Yeah, great question. What's 2 plus 2? Nope. They're at university, you should know it's 5. So they shove down your throat. Yeah, you gotta answer 5 or else you don't get the test right. And even if you do better, yeah. Why I distrust carbonating? Because carbonating, they've taken like live seal eggs and tested them, and they came out to be thousands of years old. Volcanism is known to severely interrupt. So Mount St. Helens erupted in 1982 or 1980. Well, no, 80 when it first erupted, and the landslide was in 82. But they went and tested the soil around Mount St. Helens, and it was showing that this brand new soil that was washed into place was millions of years old. It's like it just got here. Like we just saw it come down from the top in 1982. So I could go test after test where they've tested it. Carbon's only good for 50,000 years, period. It cannot last more than 50,000 years. So if there's any carbon trapped in anything whatsoever, it's got to be less than 50,000 years as it is. And so you get these dinosaur datings of 80 million years or 73 million years based off of carbon content within a bone. Well, why is there carbon left in the bone in the first place? Carbon shouldn't even be in the bone, but what they have to do is they've got to speculate what it ought to be. So I always tell people, carbon dating is like this. If I walk into a room and there's a candle burning, and I analyze the candle burning, and the candle was 3 feet tall, and after 12 hours, it's now 2 feet tall. So it's burning at 1 inch per hour, right? So I document that, and I say, okay, its burn rate is 1 inch per hour. Did everybody follow me? How tall was the candle when it first started? I don't know. I have to assume a certain height to say, well, the candle's actually 200 years old because it started off at, 250 feet. There's so many assumptions that have to be thrown into carbon dating for it to work, that it's just radioisotope dating is different because now they're dating helium that are trapped within zircons and granite, and helium is a very slippery gas. So when helium is actually located inside the zircons and granite, you can look at it and say, okay, this amount of helium is still in there. It's got to be this old in order for that amount of helium to sit. Plus, it leaves fissures when it's moving and stuff like that. It's a really cool. So radioisotope dating, totally down with that. But carbon dating, it's been proven to be so fallacious that I don't like it. To me, it's just not a good science. A lot of guesswork, a lot of assumptions thrown in there. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to assume things. I want to know as close as we can get to the reality of something. You must have thrown with the Patriots or something. That was before he left. Tom left and they just went. Plus, I hate the Patriots. Yeah.
Is there any other way to think that this was Jesus based on his Romans, he stabbed him, broke their legs? So is there any other?
No, I mean the secular. I have an article that I used to have in my talk. It's from a secular magazine, and it says what we can know about the shroud for sure is that it's that of a first century crucified Jewish man. The secularists would admit that. Whether it's Jesus or not, they wouldn't make that connection. But when Gary made that connection between the crown, the spear, and the legs, that was pretty solid for me. Because when he first said it, I was like, oh, give me a break. You can't make that connection. God bless y'all. Thank you for coming out. Yeah. Just based on the first century Jewish herringbone wheat pattern, the pollens that are on there coming. There's one pollen that's on there that when you draw three circles as to where it grows, the interconnecting portion between the three circles is right in Jerusalem. Plus, on the bottom of his feet over here, they took that tape and put it on there, pulled off a limestone that's only found in the limestones of Jerusalem area. So it has to be a Jewish man in the sense of the long hair, the long beard, the first century herringbone wheat pattern, the pollens, and the limestone. So they kind of concluded that that's got to be where that's from. That herringbone wheat pattern is very significant because of the first century technique that was developed back then. Again, being that of a rich person. So that cloth was not cheap whatsoever. Hey, don't let me forget to give you this mic back too. I see myself driving on the road and get on the airplane tomorrow.
It just cut out anyways.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think my mic just died on the battery, so. You have a question? Excuse me. Everybody good? What do you think? It's at the end of the day, it's just a really cool piece to talk about. It's a conversation piece. My faith doesn't waver one way or the other because of it, but it's just cool. It's just neat to think